Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the regular business meeting for Tuesday, February 17th. Holland Squallen, Clis Tuktumut, Squamish Okmeo. As always, we're gathered to do our work today on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Please be advised that this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to view on the District of Squamish's website following the meeting. If you have concerns, please notify the corporate officer present at the meeting. In this case, that's Ms. Von Boudreau. Can I have someone move adoption of the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And I just wanted to point out that for those in the room, we have Councillor Pettingill is joining us remotely today. Thank you, Councillor Pettingill, for joining us. So next we'll look, we do not have any delegations or invited presentations. Next would be looking for any unscheduled public attendance. This is anyone that has a issue that they'd like council to consider that's emergent in nature and needs immediate attention. Seeing none, move on to public hearings. So councils will consider development permit amendment number DPA 49 for 37525 Innovation Way, which is carbon engineering, which is a height variance. So first we'll receive a presentation from our staff, and then we will have opportunity for the proponent and members of the public to provide comment on this. I will have a script at that time, but right now we'll go to the staff presentation to get us started. Over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jessie Fletcher. I'm the Manager of Current Planning with the District of Squamish. This evening, I'm here to present for Council consideration development permit amendment number 49, which would permit the applicant to clad a piece of equipment on the site. DPA 49 also includes a variance to the height in the CD 69 Area C1 zone to permit the cladding of this equipment. Development permit amendments that are minor in nature are typically delegated to staff for decision. This DPA includes a variance to the maximum height. This variance is not delegated, which means that council is the decision maker on both the development permit amendment and associated variances. Decision on a DPA requires an evaluation of to what degree the proposed amendment deviates from the approved form and character of the existing development permit. A quick overview of the context. The subject site is located at 37525 Innovation Avenue. It is located on the Squamish Oceanfront Peninsula along the Cattermole Slough. The site is home of Carbon Engineering's Innovation Center, which has acted as the company's advanced development operations headquarters, where they work at optimizing and improving their direct air capture technology. There is an existing approved development permit on site. The Carbon Engineering Innovation Center was approved for a development permit in 2020. DP 552 approved the construction of a two-story research and development facility. The site has always included a variety of equipment, including the equipment under discussion this evening. Equipment is typically exempt from DP guidelines. The subject site is designated waterfront employment, Squamish Oceanfront Sub-Area Plan within the official community plan. The site is zoned CD69 and falls within Area C1. It has been subject to Development Permit Area 1, 2, 11, and 12. Development Permit Area 12 is the Oceanfront Development Permit Guidelines, and the approved DP was reviewed against these guidelines. This is a rendering of the calciner protective structure, which is the equipment under consideration. It is proposed to be clad in corrugated metal in the color charcoal gray. The structure is approximately the same height as the equipment, but constitutes a structure, therefore needs to meet the zoning. The total height of the structure is 20 meters, while the allowable height in the CD 69 zone Area C1 area is 15 meters. A height variance of 5 meters is sought. On the image on the left on the screen, the red line represents the height permitted in the zone, and the yellow is the requested height. The image on the right shows the location of the structure on the site overall, highlighted in red. The structure is being clad at the recommendation of the manufacturer to protect the components from the elements. The calciner is a critical component to the applicant's operations. Because a development permit exists on site, a new structure would need to be added through a DP amendment. A general review of the guidelines indicates in staff's opinion that this building is minor in nature, comprising only 60 square meters of area, and still upholds the general form and character that was approved through DP 552. Staff recommend approval of the development permit amendment and associated variances this evening. Sorry, and staff is ready to take any questions or comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, we'll start with questions and then I will go into the script for the public participation portion. Are there any questions from council at this point? Councillor Stoner?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm just wondering if staff can clarify why cladding the piece of equipment makes it a structure and not still a piece of equipment.
Thank you. Through the chair. So it's a determination by the BC Building Code, and I believe the structure itself needs to be signed off by an engineer, which makes it a structure as opposed to just equipment, which is a piece of equipment. But I'm not a technical expert in this area. The building department has indicated that it is a structure and it would need a height variance.
I'll let us all ponder that. We'll go to Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. Might be interesting to understand, especially in the context of BC assessment, how this changes what things are buildings and taxable versus not. But my question was, am I correct in understanding that Matthews Southwest would be the only neighbor near enough for notification, and were they part of the, did they receive notification about this?
Through the chair, a notification was delivered to properties within 100 meters of the property. I can confirm that the oceanfront lands are owned by a singular owner, and they would have been notified through this process. And they also would have signed off on the variance as they are the existing landholder for this site and subject to the phase development agreement.
Great, thank you.
Council, any other questions? So just the maximum height that we're contemplating here is 20 meters. How does that compare to the maximum like heights that we allow in other zones? I'm just trying to contextualize that. The one graphic helped from what's allowed currently to what's being proposed, but just broadly in the community, what does this look like, and is there another comparable?
Thank you for that question. Through the chair, the maximum height downtown is approximately 20 meters. 6 stories can typically be achieved in 20 meters, sometimes a bit higher than that. The adjacent site to the south, Lot O, was recently zoned for 5 stories and I believe just under 20 meters. I'd have to confirm the height there as well. So
No, that's precise enough for my purposes. So thank you for that. Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you. And just in follow up to that, I'm assuming that but would like to double check that this has been referred to fire department and meets response codes.
Thank you for that question. This specific application has not been referred to the fire department, has been reviewed by the building department as it relates to the fire department responding to buildings of a certain height that is floors containing gross floor area. That is the trigger. So anything that the highest floor containing gross floor area being 18 meters above grade where the fire truck would park would trigger a response from the fire department. And that's the point where they would have to evaluate whether or not it could be supportable. There are no floors containing gross floor area in this situation, and therefore the response would be different.
Okay, we'll move on. If there's no further questions from council, I'll move on to comments from the public. I do have a script to read, and then council will have another opportunity following submissions, if any, to follow up on anything that we've heard so far. So the proponent and members of the public will be given an opportunity to be heard with respect to council's consideration of development variance permit number DPA 49, which was formerly development permit 36 for 37525 Innovation Way, Carbon Engineering, which is a height variance. The proposed variances in the District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200/2017 are outlined in the development variance permit included as part of the agenda and available on the district's website. Members of the public are reminded that you may only speak to the proposed variances, which are a section 40 MMM, Comprehensive Development Zone 69, subsection 4.4-1, height So varied from maximum permitted height of 15 meters or 4 stories to the maximum permitted height for the principal buildings and structures is 20 meters. We're trying to make this a safe space for everyone to voice their opinion without interference from others. Therefore, I ask that members of the public maintain order and quiet throughout the process. Please do not applaud or interrupt any speech or action by members of council or any other person addressing council. All speakers will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to address council. For all speakers, please start your remarks by clearly stating your name and neighborhood. First, I'd like to invite any officials from the Squamish Nation to comment on the proposed zoning. We don't have any with us tonight in the room, so I will move on to the, now I'll ask the applicant or the representative to comment, after which everyone else will be given opportunity to speak. So now I'll call on members of the public. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to address council. I'll first call on speakers participating in person. Please raise your hand, wait to be recognized, and then approach the podium. Instructions are available on the District of Squamish website for online participants, and there is a moderator who will communicate with people participating online. I will now open the floor to anyone that would like to make a submission. There's no one identifying themselves in the room that would like to make a submission. So I'll look to our online moderator, and I'm getting a negative for participation online. The instructions on how to participate are on your screen if you are participating online. So I'll attempt to buy some more time if folks are having a hard time navigating those things. And I will check back in. Their stuff, still nothing online. In the room, I will do a final call for speakers. Would anyone like to speak on this matter? The time for public submissions is now closed. I'll ask council if there are any further information that the planning department might provide in response to any of the comments or questions that we've had in our discussion so far. Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, just reflecting on having not referred this to the fire department. This is a piece of equipment that gets heated to 900 degrees Celsius and is now considered a structure. So it's a unique piece of infrastructure. I guess I'm just curious what are we expecting that the fire department is capable to respond? Do we know that they have that capability? Is it up to the proponent? How do we address that through this process, given that it's now an enclosed structure and not just open?
Thank you for that question. Through the chair, it will be referred through the building permit process. The height itself isn't a consideration for the fire department, given the way they the height consideration that I poorly explained before was in relation to tall buildings, which would be a residential building as opposed to this structure. It will be referred through the building permit process, not through the development variance permit, or the development permit amendment. I'm sorry.
So that's which happens at the next step. Should this be approved?
So just to clarify, the fire department will review the building permit, and if they're not okay with it, then building permit doesn't proceed?
Through the mayor, it will be referred through the building permit process. There's typically a solution. I can't speak to the building permit process this time.
Thank you for that. Does the height variance, does it apply specifically to, like, exclusively to this structure, or are we saying that the whole site in future can go to 20 meters?
Through the chair, it would only apply to this structure.
Okay, thank you. Council, any other questions? We do have a recommendation before us if we're ready for that. Are you moving the staff recommendation? Councillor French moves the staff recommendation. Councillor Hamilton seconds. Go ahead, Councillor French, like to speak to it?
Yeah, thank my council colleague for bringing up the fire department issue. When I was going through the details and the information, it didn't occur to me that that could be a consideration or a concern. And after the questions, I see that and am satisfied and happy that the fire department will be consulted at the building permit stage. And I have confidence that there are measures to deal with any concerns that the fire department might have. And I'm sure that if there isn't, we'll see this again.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much to staff for putting together the report. This, in my mind, is a very sensible reason for a variance. There's obviously a very unique piece of equipment. It needs a very unique height in it that may not have been foreseeable at the original design of this facility. So this is a very appropriate use of a development variance permit. And so I certainly am in support of the variance.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm also in support of this variance. I would also like to express appreciation for the obvious conscientious attention that's been given to the form and character in this design of a 20-meter tower in a prominent location. To quote from the Development Permit Area 12 Guidelines discussion, wood cladding will set the precedent for future development of the site. This is very encouraging. I note in my travels that in Europe, 12 14-story buildings are clad in BC Coast Western red cedar. We don't do that very often here. And I presume that this might be cedar that be used. There are alternatives, larch or Douglas fir. So that's just a note that I appreciate that attention to the form and character in this design. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I will support this. I think it makes sense in the context of our policies. I had some of the same questions as Councillor Stoner. I would appreciate getting a little more clarity on how sort of non-residential heights are managed by the fire department and how we sort of deal with those things, because I think the point was made. Most of the conversations I'm familiar with is in the context of residential, and it's not clear to me how industrial differs, if it's a case by case, and how we should manage that. So just in the future, a bit of clarity would be helpful in the context of this application. I think this is supportable. Yeah, I'll leave it there for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments on this, Councillor Stoner?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I will be supporting the motion on the floor and the variance as requested. I do think it makes good sense to clad a very large piece of equipment that has probably a lot of value to it from the elements that we see. And if that means adding a little bit of extra height on a small portion of the footprint of this property, I think that makes good sense. My questions around the fire department, I will trust will be managed at building permit effectively, but similar to Councillor Pettingill, future conversation around how we manage that from an industrial perspective versus vis-a-vis residential would be beneficial. And I'll channel my council colleague, Councillor Anderson, that with the large, big gray metal wall, that maybe we can think about something that happens down at Granville Island, where there's actually some cool art forms that happen on the outside of it and decorate it a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you. Bit of a blank canvas there. Sorry, Councillor Pettingill, your hand's up. Is that a legacy hand, or you like to go again? Legacy hand? Okay, thank you. Speaking in support of the motion, I think as others have stated, this is a sensible use of a variance and really what this process is for. That technicality between what's a piece of equipment and what ends up being a structure, I think is interesting. And in this case, a piece of equipment that is that high wouldn't have needed a variance. And the fact that it needs to be cladded as the trigger, which is just a strange anomaly to me, but at the same time makes good sense and makes this variance justifiable. So happy to support and see this move forward. Go ahead, Councillor Greenlaw. Sorry if I missed your hand earlier.
Oh, no, I just put it up. Yeah, just through the chair in support of the motion. And I just wanted to echo some of the comments about making it aesthetically pleasing. Even beautiful would be great. Thanks.
And with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Okay, moving through our agenda now, we are on to the consent agenda. If anyone would like to pull anything from the consent agenda, this would be your opportunity to do that. Councillor Stoner?
Item 6B2, please.
Okay, anyone else like to pull anything? Go ahead.
Yeah, B1, please.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
I forgot 6D1 as well, please.
Okay. Anyone else like to pull anything from the consent agenda? Okay, with those items removed, could I have someone move the actually, hold on. I'm actually going to pull E2 just to combine it with the late business item. Makes sense. So with that, I will look for the moving of the consent agenda. Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So now we'll deal with the items pulled at their appropriate spot. Now we're on to the District of Squamish zoning bylaw, 2200-2011 amendment bylaw for 38921 Queensway.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carrie Hamilton, planner for the District of Squamish, and I'll be presenting to you today Amendment Bylaw 3092-2024 for first, second, and third reading for rezoning file 00048, located at 38921 Queensway. This bylaw is proposing two amendments to facilitate the expansion of no limits motorsports. Amending the definition, the first one is amending the definition of automobile-oriented commercial use for clarification. And the second is amending the automobile-oriented commercial map in the Business Park Industrial Zone I-11 to allow for that use on a larger portion of the 38921 Queensway lot. This project advances strategic plan objectives under Prepared for the Future by supporting the expansion of existing employment spaces and supporting emerging economic sectors. 38921 Queensway is located in the Squamish Business Park and is designated industrial employment in the OCP. The development has frontages on Queensway and Resolution Way. So the existing uses on the lot include the automobile-oriented commercial use with a retail showroom, a service and repair use, and storage uses, as seen in the left-hand image. The proposed bylaw amendment would allow for the automobile-oriented commercial use to expand north along the Queensway frontage, and this area is identified in the red. And this will allow for the service, repair, and storage uses to expand west at the rear of the lot. The additional rear of the lot, area seen in blue here, is not included in this automobile-oriented commercial use expansion and will remain a more industrial-focused use. If this rezoning is not successful, the applicant could still expand the automobile-oriented commercial use in compliance with the I-11 zone. This would result in a significant renovation to the existing building and the warehouse and service industrial uses expanding along the Queensway frontage instead. The bylaw amendments would support a more economical expansion to the site and allow for an expansion of the public-facing automobile-oriented commercial use along the Queensway frontage, better activating Queensway and complying with development permit guidelines. So the first amendment is to change the definition of automobile-oriented commercial. To clarify, the use includes the sale of a broad range of motor-powered recreational vehicles. All additions are shown in blue here on the screen. And the definition distinguishes between the sale of motorized and non-motorized bicycles to ensure only motorized vehicle sales are permitted. Retail of bicycles continues to be not a permitted principal use in compliance with the OCP policy. The second amendment is to amend the image within section 39F.12 of the I-11 zone to have no limits for automobile-oriented use on an additional portion of 38921 Queensway. A land development agreement is required to secure off-site works for the project in excess of the subdivision development control bylaw, and they include the addition of a new bus pad, shelter, and related amenities, sidewalk construction along Resolution Way and the unfinished portion of Queensway, removal of existing driveway accesses, and secure a general civil design for these specific works in Attachment 2. So to engage the community per policy, the project was posted to the District of Squamish Development Review website, and a development sign has been posted on the site. No public comments were received. Ministry of Transportation and Transit, MOTT approval is required for this rezoning, and MOTT have provided written comment that they have no concerns with the project and will issue approval following third reading. The District Land Development Procedures Bylaw regulates that no public hearing is required for this application as it's compliant with the OCP policy, and notification has been sent in accordance with the Local Government Act prior to consideration of first reading. So the recommendation before Council tonight is that the District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw Amendment Bylaw 38921 Queensway number 3092 2024 be given first, second, and third reading, and that prior to adoption of the District of Squamish Bylaw Amendment Bylaw, registration of a land development agreement securing engineering conditions as outlined in the report to Council. Alternatively, Council could give the bylaw first and second reading only and direct staff to make the following amendments before consideration of third reading, or the amendment bylaw could be defeated. Implications or alternative recommendations to this is that delays to the rezoning may delay the planned expansion of the facility, and the business could still expand with the less activated industrial use expanding along the Queensway frontage. That concludes the presentation this evening, and welcome Council's questions and comments.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Council, questions? Yep, go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Ms. Hamilton, an element that comes to my attention in your report is under the land development agreement, sidewalk construction along Resolution Way and the unfinished portion of Queensway. Where the sidewalk would be constructed is today used for parking, for employee parking for the 3 or 4 businesses in the vicinity. There'll be one less at this time, but nonetheless, has been its use, and people park in perpendicularly. Parking is quite constrained in this area for employees of neighboring businesses. I have made contact with a neighboring business who has given me a tour of parking issues some time ago. I didn't hear back, but I would encourage them to, or would have encouraged them to get in touch with you through the input process. So parking constraints are complicated by the presence quite often for periods of time of vehicle dwellers on the Resolution Way back portion there. And what I'm particularly concerned about is that I'm not seeing in the site plan provision for customer parking. Is there anything you may be able to elaborate on that issue of provision for customer parking? This is my question, especially as the parking area will definitely be reduced by the site plans as proposed. Thank you.
Certainly, through the mayor, to the first question, which is specific around customer parking, this rezoning application is compliant with the district zoning bylaw requirements for parking for these uses. So all of the service uses will be met on site, either through the existing parking area that the business has offered, and as well within a new additional parking area proposed in this expansion. For the existing parking that's on the street, my understanding is the civil design is still in draft form. This is what the land development agreement would secure these specific items, but they wouldn't dictate exactly where the curb lines are or where these details are. My understanding is that the curb line is already that the way that they've designed this curb line, it shouldn't be impactful to the existing parking that's there. There's already quite a lot of width in the area. And so those parking concerns could certainly be something that is considered by the engineering department at the servicing agreement time.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill, then Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand why we went this direction with the changes. And I guess in my mind, when I think about some of our policy and so on, we've got, 50% mode shift we need to hit. We have, by my evaluation, been hesitant to allow for more sort of warehousing of vehicles, just standard ICE vehicles. And the business in question doesn't seem to be interested in selling automobiles and trucks. This is really off-road use, motorbikes, snowmobiles, boats, that sort of thing. And so I guess intuitively, I would have expected something that maybe allowed those sort of uses consistent with the existing business and how they might want to expand. But I'm sort of challenged by the idea of just standard automobiles and trucks. And a future owner could turn this into just another standard car dealer, which really seems, again, at odds with our policy direction. And I would sort of lump the prohibition on standard bicycles in this too. I mean, including that doesn't prohibit the current owner from doing anything they want to do, but does allow for in the future, I would think, more in the direction of the things we're trying to facilitate. So I'm just wondering if staff can speak to why we've constructed the new zoning this way, as opposed to something that allows those sort of off-road boat, snowmobile uses and allows bikes, but doesn't allow just sort of standard automobiles and trucks and expansion of those sorts of things.
Through the mayor, in order to, the way staff has structured this is to be compliant with the way the zoning bylaw is already allowing this use in the industrial park. So although it says automobile oriented commercial, this use is generally quite broad in the zoning bylaw written right now. And the intention of these amendments is just to clarify what that actually means, because there is in that definition a term recreational vehicles, and we have interpreted that to mean a broad spectrum of uses, which does not just encompass automobile sales. So that is why we've taken this approach, because we also don't want to impact any other existing businesses that are currently operating under this definition. You are correct that there could be a concern by allowing this expansion that this business owner may move forward with automobile sales instead of what they're currently proposing, which is their expansion of their existing use, which does not include automobile-oriented sales. So that is what is on the table here, but is not what the applicant has proposed. In terms of the bike definition changes being brought up, the OCP policy is very clear that we do not want to support retail sales in the business park, and that is why that definition is restricted to just motor-related bicycle sales in order to prevent bicycle only retail operations operating in the industrial park, as we believe that that can be facilitated elsewhere in our community that's more accessible to the community to access.
If I can follow up on that. So am I mistaken in that this section, like I see, for me, there's a proposed change to automobile oriented, and I sort of understand the proposal. I'm not sure I'm quite there yet, but separate from that, there's also applying that definition to a new area, which is part of that site. And those two things seem to have come together. I'm wondering if actually this expansion actually deserves a different zoning or a different definition, or am I mistaken? And this area is already automobile oriented commercial, and so it would just benefit from the change in definition, but there's no change in zoning, just a change to the zoning definition, if that makes sense.
Through the mayor, I do understand, I believe I understand the question. The concern is just that if we were to create a new use specifically for this, that we could also exclude other uses or other businesses that are currently in operation that operate under kind of recreational vehicle sales as well. And so the idea is that we are trying to stay specific to how our zoning bylaw is written right now, and just adding more clarity to our existing uses and definitions to clarify this expansion for this particular portion of this property.
So sorry, just if I can follow up, but we have I-8, I-9, I-11, a bunch of different Is. So we could, in theory, just have an I-12 that allows the sort of desired uses here and not impact other uses. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, that would be correct. We could have theoretically spot zoned the property for a zoning specific use. We would have to define a new use, which is not common practice or best practice when it comes to zoning bylaws. As you council may have noticed with other items, often when we add additional uses, it provides more confusion moving forward. For example, fitness center and indoor recreation being separate uses leads to less clarity. So by just making the use automobile oriented commercial more clear and expanding the area to this property, staff felt that it was the clearest direction for interpretation moving forward.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Stoner, and then French.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, when we did do the rezoning of this area back in 2021, we did a substantive amount of engagement, and we were really thoughtful at the time as to why some properties were included or not. So can you speak to some of the history of the decision making for why this was previously excluded and how the feedback that we received back in 2021 might support or be counter to what we're considering here this evening?
Through the mayor, I certainly can't speak to all of it, but I can speak to some of it that's related to this particular application. And that is that at the time when we were doing that work we were looking at existing businesses and ensuring that we weren't going to displace the existing businesses. And at the time, No Limits Motorsports, the applicant, was in operation, and we did exclude the portion of their property that they were operating in. And so they have just consolidated their lot and expanded their lot and are just seeking to expand their business. And so that follows the intention of what that work was done back in the day, where we were trying to accommodate existing businesses. And so staff have taken the same intention or same approach with this application, is that we're supporting an existing business expanding on their beside their property, instead of having to potentially go find a new property that fits into that area. And then the other piece is that the line and where this was divided, or the south section of the business park, is pretty much, if you look at the map, is quite close to this area. As you can see, they kind of defined and took out the original Queensway property. And so we've just kind of taken that line a little bit back, and we're not trying to, it's not like in the middle of the south property and something like that. So staff have also used that as a rationale to make this change.
Thanks. Would it be possible to go back to the map that you had of the previous OCP map and the current proposal?
Okay, Councillor French.
Thank you. I'm glad this is on the screen. Am I correct in saying the original version of the report to council was different from what we're seeing here?
Through the mayor, I don't believe so. This is
Okay,
what we have in the council.
awesome. Just when I first looked at it, I was confused on Friday. And then when I saw this, I'm like, okay, that makes more sense than what I saw on Friday, but it could just be that seeing it on the screen is giving me a different perspective.
Through the mayor, I did add the red polygons to add a little bit more clarity for council in this presentation. But the map won't have a specific polygon on there.
Okay, that's what I'm awesome. That was a good change. Thank you. I wanted to ask about access in and out of the property because I was hoping I might get clarity in the presentation and I didn't. I think that what's happening is the Queensway in and out that currently exists is being removed and all traffic in and out is being pushed out to Resolution Way. Am I correct in that?
Through the mayor, no, the existing access that the business has on Queensway would remain. Any of the accesses that are have been allowed for the additional land, so the consolidated lot, there are, I believe, like 3 or 4 different accesses on there, which includes another Queensway access. That is what has been restricted. So there's no further accesses allowed on Queensway, and any access to the expanded site would be off Resolution Way.
Okay. And so assuming this moves ahead, there will be 2 ways to get in and out, one off Queensway and one off Resolution. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thanks, Mayor Hurford.
Thank you. Council, any other questions? I have some of my own, and then I'll come back to you. In the agenda, in the staff report, it says that in the first 2 amendments to accommodate the proposed expansion, the first one includes language that says retail bicycles continues to not be a permitted principal use in compliance with OCP policy. And then the automobile-oriented commercial has that clarifies, but this does not include retail sales of non-motorized bicycles. And I just want to make sure that we're all really clear about principal uses versus the accessory retail uses or just not permitted. So the way I read this here, I think I know what it says, but it doesn't feel like it's crystal clear, which is our aim here. Could you explain the difference between those 2 statements?
Certainly, I'll try to. So I would say the best approach would be to follow the definition, and the definition is allowing a number of uses, and then offers more clarity to say that an accessory uses of bicycles up to 20%, and those and they're only e-bicycles that are allowed in that sale. So you could not have, in this definition, could not have a primary use that is only selling e-bicycles in this, under this definition. Does that provide more clarity?
Yeah, I think so. I think that I'm just struggling with this one a little bit where when I saw automobile oriented commercial, like in previous iterations, I've treated that very much as like transportation focused, just sort of that, and automobiles, how we've been doing that, and things have evolved over time to include all these other things that were never considered modes of transportation when this definition came about. So I'm struggling with this one a little bit, and defining that 20% of floor area is the trigger. I'm just wondering given all the rest of the restrictions here, why the exclusion could be there and not just be combined with the same regulations as acoustic bikes and e-bikes, giving the same standing in this being a maximum of 20% of the overall. So I'm not seeing the differentiation between the e-bike use and the bicycle use rationale.
We maybe have an answer. So as the definition continues, it does then say, it clarifies, but does not include retail sales of non-motorized bicycles. And the rationale of why we wanted to restrict that was that we were allowing the e-bicycles because a lot of the motorized businesses that are selling different recreational motorized different forms of transportation are also using the same retailers that sell e-bikes. And so we wanted to be accommodating of all of those aspects, but felt that bicycles were kind of a separate component that are as far removed from the intention of it, the industrial use, which is for more kind of motorized transportation uses.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll continue to mull that over. Councillor Stoner, I saw your hand next.
Yeah, I was just trying to remind myself in the I-11 zone if there's a limitation on the square footage that can be used for retail. So one of the rationales behind the 2021 was to try and find this like balance of the encroachment that was happening with increased amount of retail and business in the what was hopefully going to be the industrial park and was turning into the business park. And so is there a limitation on the amount of retail space versus what can actually be used for repair or mechanic?
Certainly, through the mayor, and this might help with your previous question, is that there is also, we do have a provision in the zoning bylaw that supports 20% retail sales. So you could have a warehouse facility of bicycles, normal bicycles, and allow for 20% of retail sales. That's a completely different use. So what this is defining is just what automobile-oriented commercial is, but it doesn't restrict that the I-11 can support other, like if you were a warehousing bicycle retailer and wanted to come in, there's another provision for you that you can sell. You can have a 20% floor area to sell in your bicycles there.
Sorry, is that broadly, or does that apply? Is that also at play with this, and the e-bikes are treated differently? That's outside of this. That's broadly in the business park. Is that correct?
It's outside of this. So this is just clarifying this particular definition.
Okay, thank you. Council, other questions? Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
I wonder if staff could advise as to whether the applicant has requested or explicitly desires the opportunity for retail of e-bikes at this location and within this redefined zone.
Through the mayor, yes, they have requested that.
Council, I am through my speakers list. So if there's additional questions, this would be the time. Councillor Pettingill, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, and I got disconnected briefly. I was going to test a motion.
Yep, now would be a good time for that. Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to move that zoning bylaw RZ 48 be referred back to staff to develop a zoning change for the site that does not add automobile or truck sales to the site, and to include unrestricted bicycle retail in the definition of automobile-oriented commercial, and would speak to that if seconded.
I do not see a seconder for your motion. Is there anyone that wishes to make another motion, or Councillor Pettingill, if you'd like to try another motion, you're welcome to.
Okay, I would try then again, just that zoning bylaw RZ 48 be referred back to staff to develop a zoning change for the site that does not add automobile or truck sales to the site, and would leave it at that.
Still no seconder in the room. I'll go to council. We do have staff recommendations, or we can propose an alternate to that. Go ahead.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Staff recommendations moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Anderson. That's reading. Yep. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, thanks very much. I think this rezone makes sense. It's a business expanding onto an existing lot that's going to activate a section of Queensway even more. I think it's a positive change that's not going to have significant negative impact on any of the surrounding businesses. Regarding the motion, Councillor Pettingill's motion to potentially fine tune the zoning on this, I think that the staff's advice here is to maintain a simpler zoning bylaw regime where we have fewer small details in our zones and go a little bit more inclusive. And I'm in line with that, even if it does increase slightly the probability of there being more automobile sales in the industrial park. Certainly not something I think we need to see, but certainly not something that I think we need to fine tune down to the lot size. So thanks very much.
Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Firstly, I appreciate our staff members' efforts in elaborating on our land use goals for this part of the business park in response to my colleagues' questions. I think that we need to recognize that some of the prime movers, I'll call them, that are sold or handled at this site are also used in natural resource and construction industries as well, and increasingly so. And increasingly, those prime movers are electric powered. And we'll probably see that more again in future. I am a little bit hesitant about the e-bikes retail here, or to the extent that we would be allowing it. And simply because, again, our goals for this part of our business park and the really it is a site that is less suited for busy retail traffic, for reasons that I've alluded to earlier: parking, employee parking, a little bit constrained in the access, including for safety, certainly with the high-speed traffic along on Queensway. So I'm satisfied with staff's considerations, and I'm happy to support the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Hurford. I too support the staff recommendation and find this to be a great example of how the District of Squamish can cooperate with a private business to benefit the entire community.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Pettingill, then I'll come to you, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not going to be able to support this. For me, I was fine supporting the uses that the owner of this site has asked for, but the expansion of automobile and general automobile and truck sales to this site does not make sense. It works against so much of the other policy that we are working so hard on. And even if this particular owner doesn't do that, adding that use to this site just is contrary to everything else we are doing. And I think if we are comfortable with retail of automobiles as standard vehicles, we know that where people are willing, bicycles are a fantastic alternative to that. And so I see this as not general retail, but a sort of a more forward-thinking sort of retail. And so putting that restriction in terms of as an alternative to standard ICE vehicles makes sense. And so I think with this change, we are really working against our own policy, and there was a way to do this that actually gave the owner what they wanted to do that was more consistent with our policy. And so, yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you. I will support the motion on the floor and appreciate my council colleagues' comments and staff's responses to my questions dating back to 2021. I think the challenge that I had here was we were deliberate on the work that we had done previously. But as I go back through some of the feedback that we received in our previous rezoning efforts, the tension really was around, and like some of the comments from the summary are that commercial activities in the business park are driving industrial activities to the Fraser Valley. Retail in the business park undermines existing commercial areas. And then that tension point of also trying to enable enough flexibility for the existing businesses to grow and thrive. And I think that this is a perfect example of where all those things kind of come together. And staff and the proponent have done a good job of trying to find that balance of really just identifying this one particular area to provide a little bit more flexibility. My concern of actually supporting this was that the proponent did purchase the land after the fact, so the zoning was in place. And so that is the tension that I have with the ask before us. But I do think it is reasonable. And to my council colleagues' comments, Councillor Pettingill, while I appreciate the intent of trying to limit that, I think spot zoning every individual piece of land actually just overcomplicates our zoning bylaw as a whole. And I'd rather see fewer comprehensive development zones and more flexibility. And I think we continue to move towards greater electrification. So even if it ends up being vehicles, hopefully the majority of them are EV.
Thank you. Other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Greenlaw.
Yeah, I'll speak in support of the motion. My biggest concern with this update is along the lines of Councillor Anderson. Is my daughters used to go to dance across the street from this place, and the parking is it's not good. So, if they cut out a bunch of parking there, I just ask that they would be mindful of where their customers are going to be parking, because it is already quite a chaotic area. So, yeah, that would be my only comment.
Thank you. I'm speaking in support of the motion, but part of this I struggle with is this exclusion of the retail sales of non-motorized bicycles. Currently, 25-30% of all bicycles sold in Europe are electric. That's often exceeding 50% of the value of bicycles sold. I think this regulation actually regulates the kind of the other half. I don't know what the ratio is in the industry in the sea to sky, but I'm having a hard time distinguishing between the two. I do think, but given that it's a accessory retail use, it could be permitted elsewhere in the zone. I'm not going to get hung up on this, but this is a modernization, and I don't know that this language here gets us all the way there for the modernization, but that's not a deal breaker for me in my support of moving this forward. More of a flag for likely more work to come on as these trends continue to evolve in transportation. I know that and also the 20% of floor area as the accessory use sort of definition is really challenging. I know it's hard to enforce upon and to actually ensure that's the outcome, especially with very expensive things being quite small. I don't know that that's exactly the measure, but again, this is a measure that's used, and that language is used elsewhere in zoning bylaws. I'm not going to hold this up for that, but I don't think this is perfection, but I'll take progress over perfection, and we'll move this forward. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Oh.
And opposed? Councillor Pettingill opposes. Motion carries. Thank you. Sorry, did I miss you on a second round to speak on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick response to a colleague, but
well, the vote is passed, so I'll move us along. Sorry for the mishand. Thank you, staff. Now we'll move on to where are we? Oh, the outdoor recreation. Indoor recreation. Thank you. It's just been so beautiful out there.
Thank you, Mayor Hurford. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Daly, planner at the district. I'm here tonight to present some amendments to the zoning bylaw related to the indoor recreation definition for consideration of first 3 readings. At the December 6, 2022 regular business meeting, Council referred the indoor recreation use definition to a future zoning bylaw update for review. Council directed staff to revisit the definition and consider expanding its applicability. At the December 2nd, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting, a revised definition of indoor recreation was presented to the committee for feedback. Feedback from the committee included adding additional language to the definition that spoke to performing arts, music, and drama, or acting to ensure these activities were captured under this use. The definition of indoor recreation has been revised based on the feedback received at the Committee of the Whole meeting. The underlined text in the definition highlights what has been added to address the committee's comments. The new use definition now reads as indoor recreation means the use of an enclosed building for sports and physical recreation or artistic uses, whether commercial or non-commercial, where users are predominantly participants, includes but is not limited to arenas, athletic and fitness clubs, racket courts, swimming pools and saunas, dance and yoga studios, indoor play equipment and gymnasiums, production and or instruction of performing arts, music, drama or acting, painting, drawing, pottery, and sculpture, or similar items, excludes rifle ranges, entertainment uses, and, unless specifically permitted as an accessory use, amusement arcades. This revised definition includes a broader reference to the types of activities that would fall under this use, including artistic activities. It also covers activities that would have previously fallen under the fitness center use. So accordingly, the bylaw also proposes to delete the definition of fitness center and replace it with indoor recreation as a permitted use in the zones where fitness center is currently permitted. The amended definition of indoor recreation will provide more clarity and capture activities that may not have fallen under previous definition of indoor recreation or fitness center, but are considered appropriate. Given the minor nature of the indoor recreation amendments, no engagement has been undertaken as part of this zoning bylaw update. And staff are recommending first 3 readings of this bylaw amendment. And that concludes the presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Council, questions on this one? Councillor Pettingill, go ahead.
Yeah, the semantics question, which in this case may be important, and I'm just wondering how, because the updated definition says production of performing arts, of music, those are allowed, but entertainment uses are not allowed. In the way people use language, they would say, "I'm putting on a production," meaning a theater production or so on. And so, how do we just wanting to understand how we would have, or how people would have clarity as to what our actual intent is here with this language?
Through the mayor, so typically staff would review this through business licensing. So a business would make an application for a business license. They would describe their business and then staff check if the zoning permits this use. So I think that your concern would be addressed through this process.
But am I correct in thinking what we're trying to say here is that you could do rehearsal and set design and everything, and maybe even the sort of trial performance, but you couldn't have the full performances in these spaces? Is that kind of what we're trying to say?
I think it would allow all of that, and perhaps the full performance would be an accessory use to that going on if someone was having kind of a trial. You can go ahead.
If I may add, specifically as it relates to the setting of entertainment, entertainment is a defined use in the bylaw, and it's explicitly meant to cover things such as arcades, bowling alleys, billiards, pool halls, cinemas, clubs, lodges, and similar uses. So that was part of the intent of leaving that as a separate use, and so to make sure that they don't get combined into one use.
Okay. I see no other hands. So if Councillor Hamilton, are you?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor French seconds. Would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, thanks staff for bringing this forward. This is, I think, consistent with many of the uses we already see in the industrial park. So I think this is a sensible update to our definition of indoor recreation. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this, Councillor French?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Hurford. Speaking in support, I think that this also takes us to a place where we want to encourage further uses along those lines in the business park. It just, to me, makes sense. And where this originated from, I see this as a significant improvement over wording that we had previously that didn't really match council's vision for a business park that included the opportunity to have messy artistic ventures within the zone.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Pettingill, go ahead.
Yeah, I support this given the use is already permitted in terms of the fitness side. I think this expansion is I would say a fair use. I think it also though does it's going to make us need to up our game in terms of the walkability and the active transit sort of needs in that area where this hadn't been sort of community coming to do these sorts of things in general. And as we're adding more of that sort of activity here, then those corresponding needs go up as well. But I do support this and accept that challenge. Thank you.
Any other comments? I'm happy to see this move forward. Again, this was, or one of the reasons we're here is an innovative business looking for a home in the business park that did a temporary use permit to achieve that. And really, to me, Sean, that process really highlighted this gap, and I'm happy that we're addressing it in an appropriate way. So thank you to staff for all the work on that, and thank you to the business community for continuing to innovate. We'll continue to find ways to work with you. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Council, we have some, we're on to adoptions now. So as per normal, do you have a preamble for us? I was about to get you off the hook of not having a presentation, but if you'd like to speak to it before we consider adoption, you're welcome to.
Yeah, through the chair. So there is a presentation associated with the adoption here. So I can jump into it if you would like.
Go for it.
Okay. So hello again, Mayor and Council. Again, my name is Brian Daly, planner with the district. So tonight I am here to advise the council that the DCC bylaw has been approved by the Inspector of Municipalities and can proceed to adoption, and to recommend the adoption of the ACC bylaw and approval of the rezoning application alignment policy, or the RAP policy, which was formerly known as the Community Amenity Charges CAC policy. At the October 21st, 2025 regular council meeting, council passed the following motions on the slide. The motion gave the ACC and DCC bylaw 3 readings and directed staff to consult with the Squamish Community Housing Society on the affordable housing targets in the rezoning application alignment policy. The DCC bylaw required approval from the Inspector Municipalities prior to being adopted. The approval was obtained on December 15th, 2025, and the bylaw can now proceed to adoption. Staff have also completed a formal referral with the Housing Society and have made slight revisions to the policy. So the CAC policy has been updated to better align with the current legislative environment regarding CACs and the new ACC bylaw. The name of the policy has been changed to the Rezoning Application Alignment Policy, and the following changes shown in the slide have been made to the policy since it was last presented to Council on October 21st. An increase to the threshold for securing 5% of floor area dedication to the Housing Society from 30 units to 40 units for townhouse rezonings. This threshold was proposed to be increased to 50 units when it was last presented to Council. Also some edits to remove language that is not aligned with the evolving regulatory environment regarding amenity negotiations. Upon further review, staff have deleted sections of the policy that could be interpreted as going above and beyond the local government land use regulation authority. And following engagement with the Housing Society on the proposed changes to the policy, they shared concern about the potential missed opportunities for securing unit donations to the society in the future. To address this concern and still address concerns shared by the development community related to project viability under the current economic conditions, staff are proposing the increase to the townhouse threshold from 30 units to 40 units for townhome rezonings, as opposed to increasing it from 30 to 50. There has been one rezoning application that fell under the previous CAC policy and secured a floor area dedication to the Housing Society, and this application initially proposed 40 units. So with that, staff are recommending that the ACC bylaw be adopted, the DCC bylaw be adopted, and the RAP policy be approved. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
It's a legacy hand, but I did want to put my hand up, so it works out. I'm struggling with the change from 30 to 40, even though 50 had been proposed. It seems that fairly consistently consistently, when we've been asked to sort of accommodate current market conditions, we've generally said not interested in making that a criteria. Are there other reasons why this move from 30 to 40, other than sort of immediate short-term market conditions, are important?
Through the chair, I would suggest that even prior to the current market conditions, it was somewhat challenging for smaller projects to accommodate this amount of floor area dedication. As mentioned, there is only one application that fell under this, or that was able to secure this through the previous policy, and that was kind of negotiated a number of years ago. So it has been challenging for smaller projects to meet this criteria, and I'm not sure if my director has anything to add.
Through the mayor, the only thing I would add is that this is something that we will continue to study. We have a density bonus / inclusionary zoning project coming up this year that we really need to shift gears from land development agreements to just having it in the zoning bylaw. And as part of that project, we will need to do financial testing for where's the threshold for townhouse or apartment projects is. And that will also inform our cash contributions if there's an option under the provincial legislation to either require units or require cash, but both have to be financially tested. So I think it's just, we know that 30 doesn't work, and we don't know if 40 is the magic number, but it's just something that we will need to continue working on.
So sorry, if I can clarify though, that's 30 doesn't work when banks are demanding 15% profit on financing, I think. And so did we consider, if rather than moving on the 5% dedication, sort of going back to some of the things where it was 10% of the floor space at below market, or where it's not a dedication of the actual property to the housing society, or some of those things? So provide some more flexibility on how they achieve that, but still sort of seek to see some support for affordable or below market housing when we're at 30 units.
Through the mayor, I think, as my director alluded to, more work is forthcoming with the this policy, given how things are shifting with respect to rezonings and negotiating. This policy does need to be updated to reflect the fact that there's an ACC bylaw and kind of guide the interim negotiations and rezonings that kind of proceed forward once this new regime is in place, because we haven't previously had an amenity cost charge bylaw. So I think that, as Mr. Vilaniskis stated, ideally some more detailed financial analysis will be done with the density bonusing, and then that can better inform this policy moving forward.
Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you. Can I just seek clarity on what the timeline is for that additional work around density bonusing? I'm just curious how much time might elapse between now and then.
Thank you, through the mayor. So the first look at density bonusing will happen through the Garibaldi Estates neighborhood plan implementation, whereby we'll be looking at building that into the zoning. And then from there, we'll be looking at building a model through the second half of the year and looking through our zoning bylaw in 2027 to refine where possible and move towards density bonusing. But it's a work in progress that starts with the Garibaldi Estates neighborhood plan implementation.
Thanks for that clarification. The previous version of the CAC policy that we had actually had a cash in lieu value for option for affordable housing. And I wonder if there's an option to go back to that in the interim, like add an option for cash in lieu for projects under 50 units, just to guide the work that might be going on between now and doing more fulsome pro forma and land value analysis for density bonusing.
Through the chair, that would, in order to implement that, I believe financial modeling would still need to be done to inform the cash in lieu contribution, especially if it's going to live in a CAC policy, given the kind of legislated, it's not a legislative thing that's allowed typically, and the province is really trying to get local governments to move away from that. So to come up with a cash contribution without some kind of financial analysis would probably not be recommended.
If I could just add, it is what the work we will be doing is looking at what a cash contribution is reflective of that percentage and can be financially viable, but it cannot live in a CC type policy, essentially, is where we're coming up against.
Sorry, we'll call it the rezoning consideration policy.
Yes, but it's just a replacement of our CAC policy.
Semantics. Is that you had a, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, my other question was in the track changes version, we've deleted section 12, which is that the district will prepare an annual report outlining all community humanity contributions made as part of the applications in the prior calendar year. I don't think this has been typical practice, but I think that this is an important part of the work that we do in order to be able to actually communicate to the public the benefits that they are receiving as a result of rezonings, densification, and growth. So I'm just wondering why staff are suggesting that we remove this as part of the policy.
Through the chair, I believe that was removed because it is a legislative requirement for ACCs to provide reporting on this. So it was already captured under that. And the policy going forward will not be securing any cash contributions. It will just be securing the on-site affordable housing. So it was, I believe, removed just in reflection that it is a legislative requirement and this work is still ongoing.
If I could also add, for the project that we will be working on now, both density bonusing and inclusionary zoning require reporting. So if we adopt a bylaw that requires affordable housing on site for the zoning bylaw or cash contribution, it will then require reporting. So it doesn't have to be captured.
However, this is the policy that's going to guide our work in the interim before that exists. And so there's a possibility that there's 1 or 2, maybe 5, maybe 0 applications that come through. So how do we ensure that we're still reporting out on the policy that we currently are using to dictate the work that we do?
Through the chair, council could choose to leave that in.
Councillor Pettingill, I see your hand. Yep, go ahead. The floor is yours.
So I think what I heard is that cash in lieu is no longer an option, so we couldn't put that in to sort of balance a move to 40. I think I also heard though that there's only one project that would have been captured by the current policy, and it was at 40 units. And so if we make this change to 40 units, that same single project would have still been captured. So looking back, this change wouldn't have done anything. This does allow going forward, if it happens to happen, 30 to 40 units capturing in that range, them to go forward with no affordable housing. I guess I'm wondering, like, what is there something preventing us from just staying at 30 until we've done the work you're talking about and make the adjustment at that point? And if there's 1 or 2, which sounds unlikely from historical, maybe that's not the end of the world.
Through the chair, no, there is not, if that's council's desire to go in that direction. Again, staff, we're trying to kind of balance what we heard through the DCC bylaw update. The development community had requested a phasing in of the rates. We weren't able to do that. Staff presented some other recommendations a week or 2 ago to try and further kind of, reflect the engagement that we heard through that process. So again, this is just an attempt at trying to, respond to the engagement that we heard. But if council wishes to leave the threshold as what it currently is, that is an option as well.
Okay, council. I don't have any more names on the speakers list. Does someone have a motion they'd like to test? Councillor Pettingill, is that a legacy hand or? Okay, Councillor Stoner, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. I will move That the District of Squamish Amenity Cost Charge Bylaw number 3120 be adopted, that the District of Squamish Development Cost Charge Bylaw number 3121 2024 be adopted, and that the rezoning application alignment policy be approved with the following amendments. That we include annual reporting outlining all amenities secured as part of any application through this policy in the prior calendar year. And adjust the minimum threshold for policy targets on affordable housing on site to 30 dwelling units or more. If it's seconded, I'll speak to it.
Councillor Hamilton seconds. Go ahead, Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, exciting to see this work come to adoption. I think we've had lots of discussions around the ACC and the DCC bylaw. And when we last reviewed this, the key part was making sure that amendments to what was previously our community amenity contribution policy reflect the changes that we're making in the overall system that we're now using to secure benefits from rezoning and redevelopment for our community. I think a lot of those have been captured in the new rezoning consideration policy. However, the amendments that I put forward this evening are really about ensuring that our community remains up to speed and informed about what those benefits are around affordable housing and childcare in particular, with an annual reporting period, as well as adjusting that minimum threshold policy target for affordable housing back down to 30 units, which has been our current practice. And I hear that there are considerations and concerns within the development community that might not be viable. We haven't seen very many applications in that kind of 30 to 50 threshold space. But I do think it's important to keep the policy that we have while we do the important work of really ground truthing what is viable and not lowering our thresholds before we have the detailed pro forma work done. So I would rather see us hold our threshold and then advance that once we've done the due diligence work. Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments on this? Councillor Hamilton and then Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks very much. This is, I'm actually quite excited to see the ACC, particularly the ACC bylaw, come in. I think it's a very important step forward in the way that we manage rezonings and amenities within our community. I want to recognize that I don't think it captures everything we're going to need to capture, as this discussion has exemplified. Our affordable housing and childcare uses are sort of fall into gray zones now that we need to kind of figure out how to manage. I think we've definitely got work to do. There's definitely going to be progress there, but I think the ACC bylaw is a step forward. I'm not convinced that we have that the list of ACC items is either long enough or reflect the actual costs that those things are going to cost our community. But I recognize that it is challenging to project the cost of a major project 5-10 years out. But I do think we need to do some work on that. The same theory applies to our DCCs. I noticed that in our ACC bylaw, we have that list of projects. I'd encourage us to please make those DCC lists. I know they did appear in staff reports previously in previous discussions, but keep those up front so that staff and so that council can see them regularly and reflect on whether we think that the numbers that are in those DCC project lists are reasonable numbers for our for the final cost of those projects when we do come to budget time. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah,
And then
thanks.
Councillor-
Happy to support the motion on the floor. I think, and I bit of a broken record here, and I think people often accuse developers of sort of making an unfair benefit of housing circumstances, but what I keep coming back to is banks insisting on a 15% profit margin, and that being used for all of our analysis and our thinking is really challenging. And so I think it's the banks that we have to push back against. It may make in the short term things challenging for development, but I think when things are financially challenging, that's maybe the time not to do a whole bunch of development anyways. And I know there's many challenges embedded in that, but I think this is a case where we do need to hold strong if we can. And given that there weren't a lot of developments in this range we're talking about, and it would have still been captured anyways, I think this is a sensible to stay where we are as we do the pro forma work. And I hope that that 15%, protecting that 15% profit is not weighed too heavily in our pro formas. I would say I've also been looking into some of the concerns around DCC rates. Primary one is that people are lumping too much cost onto new development in an unfair way, and so existing population isn't paying enough for their own existing infrastructure. But so I took a second look through what we have in our ACC and DCC bylaws. And I think it's quite reasonable, and especially to Councillor Hamilton's point, where there's a lot of stuff being driven by new development that isn't in here, and the costs of what we have are quite possibly low. And so it's really hard to perfectly know exactly what's driven by new development versus existing. But I think we've struck a reasonable balance, all things considered. And I feel like, yeah, I know in my decision making, I'm trying to make sure that our DCCs and ACCs are really reflecting the cost of that new development, all of the costs, but only that cost. So with those points, happy to support these. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you. The amenity cost charges bylaw is a milestone in our ongoing planning and delivery of community amenities. To quote from the staff report, an ACC reserve will be established. Projects, including a new library facility, for example, eligible for ACC funding will be identified and considered as part of the 2027 to 2036 financial planning process. So with this new ACC bylaw passed, this is another step in the financial and facility design and costing processes local project planners will be undertaking to inform our future district plans, financial plans. Thank you.
Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Hurford. I support the motion, and I find us to be in a unique situation. We're at adoption, and usually pieces like this, when they reach adoption, there's no presentation. Generally, these things fly through unanimously. That is not the case here tonight. We've had a presentation. We've got an alternative motion that we're looking at, and it really reflects the fluidity of anything to do with costs imposed on developers by the district. I'm glad that this is how it's going, because I think that the conversations that we're having are important, and I do want to recognize the fluidity of this situation and how challenging it is for us to figure out where the sweet spots are for anything that has anything to do with imposing costs onto developers.
Thank you. Councillor Greenlaw.
Yeah, thanks through the chair. I'm just going to speak in support of the motion, primarily because it's progress over perfection. I am still very concerned that we are not covering the costs that we need to cover. And of course, if we are not covering those costs, then they fall onto the taxpayers, and we see ever increasing tax rates. So I suspect that there will be a financial reassessment of this in the future years to determine increased payments from developers effectively. But in the spirit of progress over perfection, I'll support the motion tonight.
Thank you. Speaking in support, of course, this motion has three pieces. The amenity cost charge, the ACC bylaw, I think is a huge step forward. I'm thankful we have this tool, and it really goes a long way to ensure that anytime development occurs, not just at a rezoning, that there's a contribution to our amenities. This with the sort of the mandated housing pieces coming down from the province really necessitated the need for this, as the available sort of development potential broadly across the community is shot way up. So I'm happy to see this. and I do think it is a step forward, and happy to see that it received the approval from the province. Similarly with the DCC bylaw, happy to see that get approval from the province and we can adopt it here. I think both of these things together do deserve a tremendous amount of scrutiny over time to ensure that the costing is as we learn more and about the costing of delivering our projects and new needs emerge in community, that these can be updated and amended regularly. But I'm comfortable with the starting point that we've reached. The third piece, of course, is the rezoning application alignment policy. And the two amendments that were put forward by Councillor Stoner, the reporting piece, to me, that makes good sense, particularly on for the interim measure. And the threshold is something that we have discussed before, but even from that time to here, there was a different recommendation brought forward, and I do think that we may need to, as a group, while this is in this sort of interim step is in place, we may need to consider application by application. We may need to vary that piece, but I'm happy to trigger the conversation earlier with where we are. I was happy to see it come down from 50 in the recommendation, but I think holding it at 30 is reasonable given how volatile things are at this point, and that we have some ongoing work to really establish what it should be, as the other numbers we're also a guess, just as 30 is, as to where the threshold should be. So yeah, I'll be supporting. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. So council, I'd like to get us through the next two items, and we'll take a break and we'll deal with the pieces referred from the consent agenda. So we have the draft correspondence on the federal emergency management engagement. So item 8A1. So I'm just pulling it up myself. And we so we have our draft feedback here. Are there other I believe we have some folks to speak to it. Would you like to orient us, or are you here to answer questions? I'm just going to give opportunity.
I'm assuming you're speaking to me.
I am, sorry. Thank you.
All good. Sorry, hard to read the room with online. Yeah, I can give, I guess, a little bit of an intro statement for it, and then open it up back to you for comments. Does that work?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, awesome. So it sounds as though you can hear me. So good evening, Council. My name is Pascal St. Louis. I'm the General Manager of Public Safety. Tonight, I'm just here to briefly present the attached letter that was drafted by staff in response to the Council motion directed on December 16th. The motion asked staff to bring back a letter to a future Council meeting for consideration for a submission into the Federal Emergency Management Engagement. At present, Public Safety Canada is undertaking a public engagement process to seek input from emergency management experts across provinces and territories, Indigenous groups, civil society organizations, and the public on ways to strengthen federal leadership in emergency management. The letter was drafted to include a local government perspective on emergency management and identify some opportunities in how provincial and or federal level funding or emergency response could better support municipalities throughout the entirety of the emergency management cycle. So that being from preparedness and mitigation all the way through to response recovery. The letter was drafted with the intent to honor the council motion, and council is encouraged, of course, to make any amendments to this letter. Given the short turnaround, we would recommend that council either make changes directly in the letter or provide direction via motion to staff for any proposed changes to ensure that the letter can be submitted by the February 28th deadline to Public Safety Canada. If endorsed, it is recommended that the letter be sent directly to the provided email address as part of that public engagement process, and the letter can be sent to the attention of both the Minister of Public Safety Canada and the Federal Minister of Emergency Management and Community Resilience. Further, as this motion was a result of a letter from MP Wheeler to encourage the district to submit feedback as part of this process, we would also suggest that he be CC'd on the correspondence. So thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. So, Council, we do have staff support, and we also, so some of this conversation is for any technical details there, and others are for maybe for ourselves to as far as wording or anything else we wanted to lean on. So if we could try to distinguish who the questions for and give some thought to that as we move through this, that would be much appreciated. Councillor Pettingill, did I see your hand come and go?
Well, I was going to test a motion. I wasn't sure if you're ready. That's why I was sort of back and forth.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, yeah, I don't know that we're there, but that might be a mechanism that gets it over the line. So go ahead.
So I was going to move that council endorse the letter and that staff proceed with the recommendations provided by staff.
Okay, I'll second that. And do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank staff for the letter. I think they did an excellent job of reflecting the council feedback and direction. I think it's a really strong letter, and happy to put our name behind this.
Thank you. Any other comments here? Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Just a footnote, really, Mayor Hurford. I note that in the letter, the draft letter, there's a list of Squamish, the 16 unique hazards identified in our 2015 community risk assessment, and they include tsunamis. In fact, this is the case. Normally, we're considered outside of the tsunami risk zone, that zone ends at Point Atkinson in our region. However, the disastrous 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake tsunami did affect our shores, and in fact, in the Squamish Harbor, we lost a navigation buoy directly attributable to the effects of that tsunami. So it's not a footnote. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Happy to see this move forward, and thank you to staff for the drafting of this. I think it really nails what we're thinking as a group and organization. So I'm happy to support and ultimately put our name to it. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And then we're on to the Deputy Financial Officer appointment. Do we have any orientation, any staff on this? So this is just an administrative appointment moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor Stoner. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. So Council, thank you for your work so far. We're an hour 40 deep here. We're going to take let's take a 10-minute recess, and we'll come back and conclude the rest of our agenda. Thank you. That has us back at 7:50. Welcome back, everybody. We are now on to, we'll move on through our agenda. We had, oh, my agenda wasn't updated. So late agenda items. Sorry, I have the printed copy in front of me that doesn't include the proposed resolution from Councillor Pettingill, but that does appear in our online agenda. Is that correct? Let's look to our corporate officer to.
That's correct. We didn't have time to reprint the agendas this afternoon.
Nope.
So, but you do have it on blue in front of you in paper.
Great. Thank you. So we'll go to that matter now. And in the consent agenda, I pulled the recommendation from the committee of the whole, and which normally would be dealt with under 11C. But I thought we should just look at these together, as that was the process we used previously, and then we can pass one motion that endorses both of them if we choose to do that. So I'm going to combine 11C and 9, which is this late agenda item. So again, these are, and the topic is a consideration of a resolution to be submitted through our the Lower Mainland Local Government Association and ultimately on to UBCM to urge the province to take specific actions. So I will go to Councillor Pettingill. This is your motion, would you like to speak to this this resolution, and then we'll have a discussion.
Yeah, thanks. So this is, I've spoken at a high level about this, was able to speak to some folks from Zero Waste BC, from FVRD, the Fraser Valley Regional District, Kate, Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, as well as a nurse doing some research here on air quality. Just in the news and in different conversations, was hearing concerns about holes in BC's air quality regulations, whether it's monitoring or access to data, so on and so forth. I want to understand what the gaps were, and because we have things that may impact our air quality coming up here, I think it's important that we pay attention to how our air quality is being managed. So this resolution is not specific to any project, although it was inspired by experiences with some recent projects in BC, which sort of highlighted some of the gaps. This basically speaks to, in a general sense, what we would want or expect for our communities in terms of air quality.
Okay. My question here, just to get us started, I thank you for doing the work on this to start with. The actual resolution in its bullet points, I just wonder if that is as refined as does that meet their criteria, I guess is the question for just the phrasing of the ask itself. To me, it's quite clear what the ask is, but that's really my only concern here, is that today, and just for council, when we if we are to endorse this resolution, it needs to be in its final form, not like substantively as presented or other language we've used at committee. So that's why I'm looking at that. That's where the question comes from, but that's what we're working towards. Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, I did go through the LMLGA requirements for constructing a resolution. My understanding is this is consistent with that. I mean, my experience has been that if there are issues, that we would hear back from LMLGA, and I guess would deal with it with an amendment probably when it got to convention. But my understanding is that this is consistent, a single resolution clause and 2 whereas clauses, and a required backgrounder, which I understand doesn't actually get included in the book, but is required for submission.
Thank you. Okay. Council, questions on this, on any parts of this? I'm not, oh, sorry. I see your hand again, Councillor Pettingill. I'm assuming you're okay for right now. I'll come. Some of these questions may be directed to you or maybe for the group, so stay tuned. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. If I may, Chair, I'd like to offer a couple of observations and maybe that Councillor Pettingill may be able to respond to them. Having been involved for about a decade in the Regional Air Quality Management Plan, a couple of things, or my colleagues, or the Ministry of Environment folks, or the Vancouver Coastal Health folks who we were working with, would have a couple of puzzles or make a couple of observations. First of all, there is an emphasis to start with the backgrounder on major projects. And in the resolution text itself, there's reference to polluters. Nothing wrong with that. But in the experience of the Regional Air Quality Management Plan, especially since the closure of the wood fiber pulp mill, our major sources of air quality criteria air quality contaminants are, in fact, old wood stoves and highway traffic. And then when our regional organization interviewed the wood fiber LNG regulators, that is, the people who sat on the task force representing Ministry of Environment, much to our surprise, they pointed out that things aren't really going to change that much for Squamish and other communities in the region. The key air quality issues to confront really will still remain highway traffic and poor standard of burning practices for burning wood in stoves and otherwise. So that I guess my query is the emphasis here is on major project, it is on polluters, but the real picture or the sort of more nuanced landscape of our air quality concerns are not really with major projects or polluters. And that's probably true for much of British Columbia. We're very fortunate in our part of the province in that respect. I do respect where you want to direct attention, but I just thought I would bring that up in case it may be brought up elsewhere or along the pathway for this resolution to be considered. That is, the focus is on major project or polluters, but the solutions, the regulations, the guidelines, the enforcement would be considered by anybody in the field to consider all manner of air quality criteria, air quality contaminants. Thank you.
I see your hand, Councillor Pettingill. I'll let you apply, but I just wanted, before we do that, Councillor Anderson, do you think that the where polluters is mentioned, I don't see any other in the whereas clauses or the therefore any other reference to major projects or anything like that. I think the issue is the independence of the monitoring and enforcement. So it says independent from polluters. Would a change to independent from industry, like just it's the self-policing that I believe is one of the pieces here of the single points of or single sources of pollution. So is there a change in the exact wording of the therefore or the whereas that makes it better, such as swapping industry out for polluters? Or sorry, swapping polluters out and inserting industry in that sentence? Or is there something else here that I just want to make sure that we're sort of focused in on this resolution?
In reply, Mayor Hurford, substituting industry would be a more generic term to use, including the wood stove industry, the vendors of these appliances, for example. That is also another industry. I think that another broader concern I have or recommendation, and this can be addressed perhaps in the backgrounder, is that we don't have a picture. I'm not coming away with the picture of how the regulation and monitoring of air quality works in BC. That is not apparent to me here. And it might, so that people might be curious and wonder what's going on, when in fact there is a there is a number of layers to the management of air quality in British Columbia. I see Councillor Pettingill has a number of references. I haven't gone through all of them, but just for example, people might be surprised that any citizen in Squamish can look up the air quality statistics in great detail in any hour of the day here in Squamish, and they're collected at the monitoring station at Househound Secondary School. That might be a surprise to somebody that would be reading this. I think in an earlier version you may have, or Councillor Pettingill may have referred to monitoring practice, but we're not, but we haven't been delivered in the backgrounder an explanation of what that in fact is. It is quite an elaborate and experienced management of air quality, no doubt can be improved, and no doubt with respect to projects. I guess I'm just pulling out some things maybe you may be able to address in a backgrounder, but so that we're comfortable that we have a clear and appreciated picture of the nature of air quality management in British Columbia today, so that we can zero in on where improvements might be proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill, would you like to respond to anything we've heard there?
Yeah, I'm hoping I can clarify, and I think what's here actually addresses the points raised. So there are some references that speak to the regulatory system for air quality. Again, there's limits on the length of the backgrounder, so I couldn't sort of detail the whole air quality regulation system. It has to be done sort of through references, and I did focus on the gaps because that's what we're trying to address. So I take my colleague's point, but I'm sort of constrained by people would have to do some work on their own. The backgrounder, as I mentioned, speaks to two sort of larger, might be considered industrial projects, but those are only because those are proof points that there are gaps. But the resolution itself, I didn't want the resolution to be focused on industry or limited to industry. I used polluter as, someone or something that pollutes. That is the general concern. And so that is why there is no mention of industry or major industry in the actual resolution. They are, again, examples of and proof that there are gaps, but this isn't meant to target industry specifically. So it's about pollution and air quality.
Okay. I'm just going to check with staff on process. I know the resolution, the whereas and the therefore, like the resolution itself needs to be complete. Is there room for are we approving the backgrounder as well, or can that be further refined outside of this? I just want to make sure to focus the conversation in the appropriate spot.
From the meeting tonight, we do need the finalized resolution in its exact form. The backgrounder, we can allow a few more days to refine. I can look up the deadline quickly here, but it is by the end of the week, I would say.
Yeah, I know it's close. I just wanted to make sure that if we were looking for perfection on the totality of it or the resolution, and there's room with the others, but it sounds like there's room with that other piece, although limited, but we don't need to hit perfection here tonight. So if we approve the resolution, say, and had comments around suggestions for the backgrounder, then that would be appropriate.
Yes, it still would be the councillors in the councillors' hands to complete the backgrounder to its entirety. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? I saw your hand, Councillor Anderson. I was going to give others opportunity on this. For any questions? I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing any. I'm seeing your hand, Councillor Pettingill, but we've sort of been peppering you with things, so you're good. Okay, Councillor Anderson, do you have a?
Yes, Mayor Hurford, I have another observation, and perhaps I'll just ask if maybe there's an opportunity for greater clarity between the first two whereas clauses. They both refer to guidelines. Firstly, the monitoring enforcement is based on guidelines, which it is asserted have some problematic aspects. In the second one, second whereas clause, whereas monitoring enforcement are inadequate for meeting air quality guidelines. Which guidelines? The ones that we observed in the first whereas clause were suboptimal. So it's that issue of clarity in the use of the term guidelines, which ones are we referring to, as we've already made an observation about the guidelines, and then we're going to refer to them again, that where our monitoring enforcement are not meeting those same guidelines. Is there an opportunity perhaps for some greater clarity, some in the use of those terms, so that we know which guidelines and how we are speaking about them in the two whereas clauses?
Councillor Pettingill, I'll go to you. I have a suggestion though, which I hope is helpful to facilitate this, is that in the first whereas, the monitoring enforcement BC is based on the general adult populations and not adequately, like I think we could drop guidelines out of that first one, because I believe we're talking about two separate guidelines. Or perhaps we can put guidelines only in one spot, because one is guidelines for human health and the other is guidelines for air quality, which you'd like to think were the same thing, but I don't know that they are. They're not mutual. So, and maybe that's the point. So anyways, I'll go to you for comment on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be fine to, if that's the preference of the group, to drop guidelines in the first whereas clause. That's fine. The comments I had in particular in speaking to the folks from CAPE who are also involved in the health authority is that really, like in the US, things would be much clearer for everyone if it was requirements rather than guidelines. So that's the ultimate goal, is to go to much more objective requirements. But even failing that, we're not even sort of coming close to hitting what we're calling guidelines now, where there's more subjectivity. Like, we're so far outside of that. So there's two layers. Like, at least please be more consistent with your guidelines. And then the stretch goal in our case is to actually go to requirements and be compliant with that. So that's sort of the reason why it's worded the way it is and the sort of context behind that. But if it helps for everyone to remove guidelines from the first whereas, that's fine.
I think, thank you for that. I think as over the last while, I've heard some pretty wild things about portions of the population that have not been considered in all sorts of things, from vehicle safety standards not accounting for females, and until recently, and that being just optional. So amongst many other examples. So I think that the not adequately protecting the health of significant demographics in and of itself is an important piece without the guidelines. So it's based on, for me, I'd say based on general adult populations, and do not adequately, and we just lose the guidelines there. And then is it inverted? I'd like to get rid of one of these mentions of guidelines. It feels like they're two separate things. One is for, like, to me, it reads as human health based on general adult populations, where the other is the actual air quality. And perhaps we're chasing semantics, because the pieces that will be really debated is the resolution. Itself. So if we're that close, perhaps we just go with what's here and address the that nuance in backgrounder. That'd be my suggestion.
It's a weird hiccup in the system and the process, in that area associations require a backgrounder. The backgrounder never makes it into the resolutions book. And so while it is helpful for those who are trying to sift through and understand the rationale behind why this resolution is getting put forward, from a resolutions committee perspective, I'm wearing my UBCM hat here, sorry. The folks on the floor won't see the backgrounder. And so putting more information in the backgrounder is helpful. And if you need to speak to it, then you've done your homework on the floor of UBCM, but adding more into the backgrounder, I don't think helps us clarify the resolution. And I think I understand where my council colleagues trying to get to on this. I do think from a matter of clarity and perspective, there's a few items in here that I think in its totality, I am supportive of the direction this is going. I think the risk is that the way that it's worded, it could easily be picked apart on the floor.
Okay, so I think I think a path forward here would be to move that council endorse this resolution for submission, and then we can debate. We can look at any amendments through that process, just to move the conversation forward at this point. So, Councillor Pettingill, do you want to move that, and I'll second it for discussion, and then we'll see where that takes us. Do you want to? Okay, so Councillor Pettingill moves that council endorse this resolution for submission. And would you like to speak to it, make any further comments here, Councillor Pettingill?
No, I am sort of trying to make a couple edits that to send something that address those. Like I'm fine with the way it is, but happy to propose some removal of some guideline references to accommodate folks. But you know.
Yep. Okay. Other comments? Other comments on this, Councillor Anderson?
In the enactment clause, the third bullet, there's reference to regulatory requirement, moving to a system of objective and reasonable regulatory requirements for air quality. We should all be aware, and I'm sure we all are, that in public administration, there will always be room for guidelines and there will be room for regulation and legislation. These are different layers and aspects of our public administration, inevitably. So we wouldn't want to suggest that the direction here is to move away from guidelines toward regulation or legislation. They're all going to work together. The other observation I'd make is from our experience with our regional group in interviewing the LNG task force of the Ministry of Environment, is that while they said that the criteria air contaminants risk from the design that they were reviewing at that time of the LNG facility at Woodfibre were minimal, they did say that they were going to be suggesting that the monitoring tools and processes proposed those years back needed improvement. And that is part of the spirit of this resolution as well. So the monitoring and baseline data were what the Ministry of Environment were concerned about during that review, and presumably advances have been made, but this particular resolution catches those elements as where we would desire improvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Hurford. I support the motion, and for me, the key thing here is science and data. Without collecting the data, we don't have the information, and that's basically what we're pushing for here. So I support moving this forward to LMLGA. With the collection of relevant data, we as elected officials, not just in this chamber, but across the province, can make better decisions and stronger policy. If we don't have the data, then we just don't have it. And as for this potentially being picked apart and edited on the floor at convention, I'm not too worried about that. We're pushing this forward. And if it gets tweaked at convention, well, we don't have any control over that, and it will go where it will go. I think we're doing our part by just getting the conversation started.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'll speak in support of the motion. This is obviously a huge topic, a very broad topic of scientific inquiry, really. Like the guidelines that get developed here have an enormous amount of work that need to go into them. The piece that stands out to me in my, quite frankly, limited investigation of this, when I look up the air quality standards in BC, the gov.bc.ca air quality regulatory framework site was last updated in 2017. So it sounds like there was a big push in the mid-teens to do a fair amount of revision of the air quality monitoring systems in BC. It sounds like that may be time to revamp and do again. I think one of the focal points of air quality monitoring frameworks is going to be forest fires. I think as far as health impacts, that's going to be a huge piece of this that we shouldn't ignore. I know that's not the focus of this piece, but that's something that air quality monitoring is going to capture a lot of. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Go ahead, Councillor Greenlaw.
Yeah, I'll speak in support of the motion. I mean, we had a conversation around this topic a couple weeks ago, and I do feel like there is a bias in what is being represented. And when you see reports coming out from some of the investigations going on in Kitimat and the lack of regulatory oversight that's going on up there, it's pretty disconcerting. So I'm happy to support this piece. I think it's an important conversation that should be moved up our governance.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'll be supporting the motion. I think this. I appreciate the work put in here and research, Councillor Pettingill. So thank you for that. I really see this ask. It's three parts: that independence from polluters, as far as the monitoring and enforcement, and the data piece, which Councillor French spoke to, and I'd like to point out the clear and transparent expectations for the public. I think is a critical part of this as well, so they know what really what to expect from their in the way of air quality, and this is also quite broad, where and I do think has application across the province, as far as there's discussions around incineration of waste and what that regulation of that should be. We also have all sorts of airsheds supporting or interacting with all sorts of industry across the province. So to me, this checks all the boxes of some holes in some regulations that need some shoring up and being broadly applicable to the province. So happy to see this move forward and look forward to the discussion at convention. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And just to deal with the piece that I pulled, which was the resolution that council endorsed, the resolution regarding preservation and revitalization of strategic provincial rail corridor. I'll move that. I just wanted to see if we were going to get entangled in those two resolutions themselves. So seconded by Councillor French. I'll just call the question unless anyone has comments on this piece. We've done that. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. So we'll get both of those included. Okay, and now,
Chair, just before we move on, my colleague pulled one of the letters, and included in that was an ask for a resolution to go through. Is actually, I think, mistaken, AVICC. I think the intention was LMLGA. I'm wondering if the intent was to deal with that at this point or not.
we can come. Staff will be able to combine it if ultimately that's what we're doing. I didn't really need to pull that last piece either. I just wanted to try to keep that conversation together. So let's go through this. We'll deal with that when we get there. Thank you. So now we're on to items referred from the consent agenda, and really it was correspondence was the first piece. Sorry, I'm going through my notes here. So we'll go in the order that they appeared. So Councillor Greenlaw, which I think is the letter Councillor Pettigill was just asking about. You pulled item 6B1, the Sierra Club letter. You want to speak to it?
Yeah, thanks to the chair. As my colleague alluded to, I was hoping that we could get the endorsement to have that be a resolution that we put to LMLGA. So I want to kind of test the waters to see, to see if that was of interest.
Okay. So I'm just having a quick read of that. Let's so would your motion be, sorry, I'm just reading through to sort of pick out the So sorry, I'm just looking through. Can you refer to the item on our, or the, sorry, the page on our agenda that has the exact resolution that you would, is that the page 54? These are sort of draft letters more than a resolution, I think, but I'm just trying to turn it into
Chair,
how
if I
about, yeah,
Page 48.
thank you.
And if I may, there's a backgrounder on page 51 in the most up-to-date agenda package.
So I have a draft. What I'm seeing on page 54 is a draft letter, not necessarily a resolution. So I just want to make sure that I know where we're.
So it's the AVICC
Okay.
resolution template. Whereas in 2019, the Federal Oil Tanker Moratorium Act was implemented, banning large oil tankers from carrying crude oil and persistent oils along BC's ecologically sensitive north coast. Whereas the federal government has revisited discussions around reopening the Northern Gateway Pipeline and Tanker Project, which would imperil salmon, orcas, herring, halibut, clean water, healthy beaches, and a coastal economy built on tourism and sustainable seafood. Therefore, be it resolved that the AVICC, which this would be changed to LMLGA, urge the provincial and federal government to affirm its strong support of the North Coast tanker ban and the protection of BC's coast from the threat of oil spills, economic disruption, and environmental harm associated with new oil pipelines and tanker traffic.
Okay, so would you like to make a motion that we endorse this to the LMLGA, like that specifically? Because there's also that letter template. Are you contemplating both? Just if you could turn one of those or one or both of those actions into a motion, I think that's what we need to do.
Okay. Well, then I'd like to make a motion that council endorse that resolution that I just read to go to LMLGA. I'll speak to it as seconded.
Are you seconding? Do you have a question for the mover?
I am happy to second it if we can also add in the therefore be it resolved clause that LMLGA and UBCM advocate, urge the provincial and federal government.
Sounds great.
Okay, I'm just going to go to our minute taker. We had some, oh, you found it. Okay, I can see it highlighted on your screen. Okay. And you have that additional language?
Yes.
Okay, so that becomes what Councillor Greenlaw moved and Councillor Stoner seconded. Would you like to make any other comments on it?
Well, I'd also like to make a motion that, well, we'll get to that too, but I'd like to do the letter too. I mean, when we heard about kind of these conversations that were happening between the federal government and Alberta, it does seem like a lot of it is politicking and it can't actually go forward. And it's all performative, but it still sets a dangerous tone for the province. And I think it's an imperative that we protect our coastal waters and that we also make a clear statement that we do not want to see the proliferation of the oil and gas industry, especially at the cost of our tax dollars.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this, Councillor Anderson?
Thank you. I will not be supporting this resolution. I have recently done some reading and watched, in fact, just recently a CBC documentary, or not a documentary, but exploration of the topic and the in fact, confusion of perspectives, not least confusion on the part of politicians. We have on this same stretch of coast a substantial traffic in fuel shipments, gas, diesel, bunker C oil. That takes place because these remote communities depend on these shipments. The definitions and what's going on and what could conceivably going on is all very unclear for most observers, especially us from so far away. I don't, in fact, see that it is quite so simple and straightforward as some may assume when we are so many coastal miles away from the scene. The other observation I'd like to make is that the original correspondence refers in several places to the coastal capital C, capital F First Nations, capital N. And this as though it were a governmental body or one that represented, was accountable to First Nations communities. In fact, it is not. The Coastal First Nations organization referred to is a nonprofit society. It was started in the late 90s at the initiative of the David Suzuki Foundation, and it is substantially funded by U.S. philanthropists, U.S.-based philanthropists. It has no jurisdiction or legal authority. It is, as mentioned, a nonprofit society, but it does not give off that impression, or we might be confused by how it is presented, for example, in the correspondence we received. So the Coastal First Nations has, in fact, less of a membership than the 5 First Nations that are opposed to the maintenance of the tanker ban. There are 5 First Nations involved in these industries, and their membership and that their governments are accountable to, in fact, outnumber the members of this society. I think it's a very unclear picture as to who's who and what's what, and too uncomfortable for me to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments on this? Councillor Pettingill, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I support this resolution. I think for numerous reasons, this makes sense. And thank my colleague for bringing this forward. At risk of getting into debate with my colleague, I think folks proposing these pipelines are funded by multi-billionaire Texas oil men and all sorts of things. So, you know, if we're going to pick and choose who's funding who, I'm not sure if that's a productive path to go down. But I think aside from that, there are many reasons to be supporting this. So thank you to my colleague.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
I do also just want to clarify for the record that the Coastal First Nations are an alliance of 8 North and Central Coast and Haida Gwaii First Nations that are recognized by the province, the negotiating land and resource body on behalf of some of their nations. And so while, all right, I will not debate you on facts, but if you want to go to the BC government website, I will direct you there.
Thank you. I'll just remind council to hold to the speaking order so we can have the debate that we need to have. Other comments on this? And I will give opportunity if for a second round if needed. I'm in support of this resolution. I would like this to be. I would love to see this debated at UBCM on the floor of UBCM. And I think it's important that the entire province has a discussion about this matter. And similar to, I would like to see this upheld. But I also think that there's a good there's value in sort of moving something forward for discussion, because this is an important matter that I think deserves a broader discussion with the population of the province and its elected leadership. So I welcome that discussion, and I'm happy to see this move forward and participate in that, which will likely be a heated discussion at every venue we attend, just as we saw a bit of a sneak preview of in this room. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Henderson opposes. Councillor French opposes. Motion carries. Thank you. That was a close one, Councillor Greenlaw. With your yes, I recognize your hand for your next speaking opportunity.
I got excited about moving on. And then I'd also look for support from council to send that letter as well to Premier, EB, and provincial ministers.
So in the updated agenda, that is page 50,
57.
starts on 54 and ends on 55. There's a sample, defend the North Coast tanker ban, protect BC's coast. That sample letter, that's what you're referring to? Do you have that? You found that okay, minute taker? Okay. That's the motion. Is there, I'll second that. Any further discussion on this? Same topic as the last one, just a different action. Not seeing any. I will call the question. All in favor and opposed. Councillor Anderson, Councillor French opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much. I'll just move receipt of the of it as well, just so we're cross all the T's and dot all the I's. Second by Councillor French. All in favor. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Next, I have the Councillor Stoner. You pulled 6B2, the Community Housing Fund letter. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to thank the mayor for taking the time to write this letter and submit it to Minister Boyle and BC Housing. I think we were very hopeful that we would receive at least some form of decision from Community Housing Fund. This was going to be the fund that was going to fund the affordable housing project on Government Road, hopefully up to 100 units is what we were hoping for. We found out today through budget that the province has slowed the pace of delivering on its housing strategy and is reallocating $1.4 billion and indefinitely closing the Community Housing Fund. So very disappointing announcement that we are assuming will mean that that is probably the end of the road. So I'm still trying to regroup and figure out exactly what this means and whether some reorienting of our advocacy around the impact that decision has. But it is news today, very hot off the press, that the Community Housing Fund is no longer.
Wow. First, Councillor Stoner is very generous to thank me for the drafting of this letter. You were instrumental in delivering this letter, but I'm happy to have played a appropriate role there. I hadn't had time to digest what happened in the budget announcement this afternoon, so thank you, for the update on that. And I'm sure there'll be more updates to come as we grapple with the realities of the provincial budgeting process. With this, I would like to propose that we maybe move receipt of this letter, and then we can make comments there just to move us through that. So I'll move receipt. Second by Councillor Stoner. Additional comments, Councillor Anderson. I saw your hand.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Hurford. I've had a few hours today to look at the budget information, and in this field of interest, our housing file, among others, I think that it would be timely for us to work with our MLA, Jeremy Valeriot, in the upcoming spending debates and take the opportunity that's available to us through Mr. Valeriot to ask particular questions of the minister. And it's a unique opportunity. The answers are obliged and in written form. So I just think that we too often miss that opportunity to utilize our MLA during spending debates. And this is a topic, among others, that we should see as an opportunity to take advantage of those spending debates to get some answers, further elaboration from the minister. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that suggestion. And just, I thought it'd be one of the reasons we're seeing this on the agenda here reflects our policy where the mayor can advanced topics that we've supported and continued ongoing advocacy. So thank you. That's a great suggestion for continued efforts in this area as a next step. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, any other comments on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And then Councillor Stoner, I had you pulling 61, the ice rink closure root cause analysis memo.
Yeah, I recognize that this is a memo. We likely don't have relevant staff here this evening to speak to this. And while I was grateful to see this on an agenda, it also raised some additional questions for me. So I was going to move that this be referred to a future committee of the whole. I believe we have an upcoming discussion around district-led projects and kind of lessons learned from those, which might be a good fit. But I wasn't going to put a specific date to it, but just that this be moved to a future committee of the whole for future discussion.
Okay, thank you. Before we have a seconder there, I think that there is a discussion happening soon, date to, but like projected to be in about a month. Of course, variabilities of reports and agenda planning, but that's the what it looks like here. I think that referring this to future discussion would be appropriate. If there are specific areas of it besides just its totality, which if that's where the interest is, that's fine. I think it may be useful guidance to ensure that next conversation sort of digs into the appropriate thing. And if that's just the totality of it, I think that's fine as well. But I just want to make sure we arrive in an intentional space there. So, and you are right, we do not have the appropriate folks in the room or online to engage with this further than this. So that will happen at a future meeting. So that's my context there. Is there anything else the corporate officer was? No, you're good. Okay. So with that in mind, do we have I'm trying to find or set the stage to get us through this. Go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
I was just going to second Councillor Stoner's motion.
I don't know that there was a motion that was necessarily a motion, and I do see Councillor Pettingill's hand, so I just want to make sure that sorry, Councillor Pettingill, was that your hand?
I was gonna second and then see where we are. I had understood we were seconding this coming to a future meeting.
Okay. I'll go to you, Councillor Stoner, as you sort of set out a direction, but I don't think it was a full motion.
My motion was that the memo be referred to a future committee of the whole for discussion.
Okay. And are you seconding that?
Yeah, second that motion.
Okay. Councillor Stoner, do you want to comment?
I think in an effort to try and provide some clarity on some of the questions that were raised from my perspective, well, this probably won't be an extensive list. Raise some questions around there was new infrastructure that was put into 2022, but as per the report, it seems like it is grossly undersized. And so how is that being addressed? There was significant observations around the humidity in the pool area and air handling and dehumidification systems there. But the staff summary and memo doesn't speak to addressing that in upcoming budgets or current work. The questions around the temporary separation measures and putting visible gaps into a wall that was clearly meant to be a wall to separate adjoining spaces seems challenging. I'm curious how that gets addressed in the current IPD project and how that is managed in the budget. CO and CO2 monitoring was flagged as an important move going forward, but wasn't addressed in the memo as something that would be considered in current work for the current project, as well as routine maintenance activities that had been undertaken in the dehumidifications were not up to current standard. And so how are we addressing our maintenance practices in order to ensure that we're getting the best out of our systems?
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, a root cause analysis like this, the value is really in looking forward. How can we, presumably we're going to be doing additional work at Brennan Park in the coming, hopefully, decade. We need to figure out how we can manage projects in a way that we can renovate existing facilities. I think we're going to be continuing to do that with Brennan Park. And I think that looking into examples where things didn't go properly and looking at those very carefully, not just in what happened, but how did we not catch it, is important. The things I'd like to see discussed or come back is, and I know that it may take staff some time, this piece may not come back right away, is what are the changes to our project management and contractor relationships that are going to enable us to have projects move forward in municipal facilities without disrupting municipal services. How are we going to, I'd like to understand how the incident, just the dehumidifiers, I believe they ended up, the budget we talked about initially was $160,000 for the emergency dehumidifiers to come in. I'd like to understand how that fits into the IPD project budget. Are we on, our taxpayers on the line for that? And if so, how do we understand where responsibility lies? I know that that is a difficult question and one that may not be able to have a conversation in an open meeting, but I do hope to understand those things. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. Just sort of add to the things I would like to know a little bit more about. I read through the report that there was a number of things that exacerbated the situation, but it's not clear to me if certain things in and of themselves were sufficient to cause the issue. Like, for example, with the removal of the wall, was it foreseeable or probable that we would have had the situation we had, regardless of the other things? Just some clarity around that. And my interest in that is, it wasn't, I don't think, an expectation that, given the magnitude of work, the rink may have had to have shut down. I think where the breakdown from my perspective is that we would have wanted to plan for that for the community and for our staffing and everything. And so is this something that we missed something in our process and therefore we missed something that was actually quite foreseeable? Or was it such a unique conflation of circumstances that there's no way we could have predicted this, and that thus there's nothing to adjust in our processes going forward in terms of how we address this sort of project? And it's not clear to me. Certain things in the report made it seem like the removal of the wall alone may have been sufficient to cause the issues, but that's a little bit of reading between the lines, and I was hoping to have a better understanding of that. And then I just had some questions about our awareness. It sounds like there was some underperformance of our dehumidifier systems, and I just wasn't clear about our awareness of that before this event and our adjustments to processes around how we sort of manage or maintain things like that going forward.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Hurford. I support the motion and found the report to be really insightful, quite helpful. And I shared the link to the report to my network and got a significant amount of feedback, all kinds of feedback, and lots of questions. Some of them very much aligned with the questions that I've heard from my three colleagues. So I'm looking forward to when this does come back to us with more information, so that the questions that we have here in this room and also out in the community can be answered, and hopefully help guide us as we continue to improve Brennan Park.
Okay, other comments? Yeah, I was happy to see this memo and the report. I think for me, the sort of distilling the broad lessons learned of renovating a building that you're operating is something that I'm quite interested in understanding. Now, in this case, it was, these dehumidifiers and and all the things, the wall, all those pieces. But what does that look like going forward? So I think like that sort of category is mostly what I'm interested in, as this building will continue to be renovated and added on to and going forward. And so there were some pieces here that I just wasn't sure. It said that around there's a couple mentions of just some pieces not being documented or being able to be reviewed at the time. I don't know if that's a review at the time of the visit, or if that's just things that aren't being tracked as part of regular maintenance or operations that should be. So I don't really. It just said weren't available to be viewed upon the site visit. So I'd just like to understand. I would like to understand that a bit more. But that broadly, like what pieces are being put in place for the remainder of the current sort of known work, and into ensure those lessons get carried forward into the next work that will occur over time. That's the piece that I'm most interested in at this point in time. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Yep. And I believe that gets us through all of the items referred from the consent agenda. So we don't have any business arising from minutes, or no council notice of motion. Open question periods. There are no questions of clarification related to the agenda items from folks in the room. Council or staff announcements. Councillor Anderson.
Mayor Hurford, colleagues, the House Sound Performing Arts Association and the Step Out Performing Arts Group and a number of talented youth in our community have been very busy over recent weeks in auditions and rehearsals and planning for Squamish Has Talent, an event coming up on Saturday evening, February 21st at St. John's Anglican Church, for which there should be tickets available. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Council, others? Councillor Pettingill, go ahead.
Yeah, just two things, and I hope I'm not in conflict on this one, but Squamish Arts and the DIA had a thank you for volunteers on Wednesday evening, and sort of as another hat as a volunteer, I got to attend and meet up with some of the folks that really do a lot to make our downtown, especially, but all of Squamish, a really fun, eventful place to be, and an incredible number of incredible people just getting together to sort of celebrate what's been done. And so thankful to everyone that was there. A few of our staff were there too, who help out make some of these things happen. And so just a big thank you to everyone there. And then this Thursday, I attended with my partner the performance of Elsewhere put on by Howe Sound Secondary. And it was a really sort of interesting, quirky play. They did a fantastic job. And so just congratulations and thanks to everyone that made that happen, and to anyone who got to see it. You know how lucky you were. And for those of you that didn't, sort of watch for this group to put on more performances next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, any other updates? I'm just looking for a date here as I'm my update will be brief. I'm really excited to just something that has happened over the last since we were last together. Squamish has been included in the latest round of Heart and Hearth, the Heart and Hearth program, and particularly with the developments we heard about tonight with the provincial budget, I'm really excited that this program is continuing, first of all, and that we are included in that. And this program is provincial response to essentially help communities that are experiencing challenges with vulnerable population and encampments with a two-pronged approach, one being the Heart, which is the wraparound services and connecting folks with the services they need, and the Hearth being housing. And so there'll be it's still early to know exactly what that means and looks like in the Squamish context. But what it does mean is that there is some help coming for our community as we grapple with these issues. So I'm excited about that. And it is something that we'll hear more about as that work advances. And I wanted to highlight an upcoming event. I'll go into the future, as we heard from Councillor Anderson. A future promo piece is the Squamish Helping Hand Society is putting on the Coldest Night of the Year event coming up on February 28th. And I encourage everyone to get involved and to come out. It really had it's been a great event over the last since inception, and to get together with community and show support for the most vulnerable people in our community. And it has been, and I expect it to continue to be, a great show of empathy from our community. So I hope to see everybody possible out for a walk on February 28th, 2026. And again, that's coldest night of the year. And that, I'll leave my update there. Yes, Councillor Stoner.
I'd like to move that we terminate this meeting.
I will second that. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you for participating and keeping us all healthy at the same time. Councillor Pettingill, thank you very much.
Thank